welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I'm your host, Jessica, and I am chatting with an author who is actually, even though Long Island is long, that's not just what they call it. You are local to us, correct?
Yes, I'm out in East Hampton right now.
So this is I'm going to say you're a local author about we're talking about a book that takes place somewhat locally, and it's pretty good. It was a juicy read. So welcome, Alafair Burke, and let's talk about The Note.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm happy to have you. So this was a really interesting book. It is about three women. They have all been canceled for various things, and they're all just of different backgrounds and races for that matter. You have May, who she was raised by her first generation Chinese mom, but she's half Chinese, and she goes May Hanover. So her mother was very clear that she wanted her to have her father's last name.
Yes, she wanted her to have every American opportunity. I mean, she definitely has like a strive. Her mother and May takes on those characteristics because she always was expected to be a good girl and to follow the rules and to get a great education and to go into an accepted profession. So she's a lawyer who's now a law professor, and she's got her two friends that she met in arts camp when they were kids, but they've kind of moved in and out of each other's lives as adults, but they've sort of been reunited kind of long distance with an ever-present text thread. They're constantly talking to each other, and they kind of jokingly call themselves the canceled crew because they've all kind of had the internet spit them out, chew them up and spit them out. And they've kind of gotten themselves through that together, and they're meeting out in East Hampton for what's supposed to be kind of sun and fun in the Hamptons, like a girls' weekend, and things go terribly wrong.
Yeah, they do. So you've got May, and I believe, she's trying to be quote unquote the model minority, as the term goes. And you've got Lauren, who, you find out she was a counselor at their camp. She's a Black woman, also in the arts. And then you have Kelsey, who is your blue-eyed, perfect, rich white girl who kind of ties them together with that, but she has baggage of her own. And it's really interesting to me just sort of how you kind of all had them be sort of interconnected. It all kind of started they almost reconnected during the pandemic, if I'm correct.
Yeah, kind of as things were reopening.
Yeah. So, could you please, because I did read a little bit about this, tell us sort of where the idea for this particular story came from, because it is called The Note, and a note is a catalyst for a lot of things that happen in this story, or seemingly there are other things going on behind the scenes. But The Note in general, where did the idea come from?
Some friends of mine and I always take girls' trips together, and I don't know if you're like this with your friends. We'll do things that are so stupid that we would never do on our own. It's just like when we get together, it's like we'll do anything to make each other laugh and just get really immature and ridiculous. It's probably not something to be proud of. But someone stole a parking spot for us, and we just we didn't even care really about the parking spot at that point. We were just kind of being stupid and joking around, we should key your car, or we should do this, or we should do that. And we started talking about what kind of notes we would leave on our car. And if we were going to leave a note, it would be a really mean one. It was stupid. But then I couldn't stop thinking about that's the kind of dumb joke, right, that you might pull that sets off something else. Like, so if you drop a note on someone's car that says, "Oh, he's cheating on you," like just to mess with somebody, and or even just to say it to make someone laugh, if that note lands in the wrong place, right, it could be a very dangerous thing. So I kind of just started thinking about like, what if that happened? And, what if the girls the next day see that something happened to the person that they left the note on? Like, would they go to the police? And just kind of how one little practical joke, can spiral and cause a lot of problems for real people.
So that's a really wonderful way to kind of decide you want to write a book about something because absolutely. It's funny. Like I've so been in the situation where you're trying to get a parking space and somebody just like drives in front of you when you're very clearly signaling
Yeah.
and you're like, I'm going to have this parking space. And somebody's just like, nope, 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 nope. And, depending on who I'm with, like most of the
Yeah.
time, I'm like, I'm annoyed. I might, give them like a rude gesture or a dirty look. But, especially like if I'm on my own, like I'm not going to do anything. Like that was rude, but we're just going to move on. But I do recall a friend of mine who that happened to, and I was in the car with her, and she just stood there in back of the car honking
Right. Just
until the
lost it.
person got out.
Just lost it. No, I mean that's and it's such a ridiculous thing. There was a TV show, I don't know if you watched it, called Beef, but it starts with
It's
these
such
two
a great,
people,
that is such a great
but they're
TV
going.
show.
The whole point though is like that they're going through something, right? They're going something through their in their own lives, and this stupid argument over a parking spot like just becomes all consuming for them, right? And then that's an entire story, right? That just starts with that. So I liked the idea of just something that was supposed to be silly, kind of blowing everybody apart, because of the own struggles that everybody is going through, like the people who are in the car and the three women who are on vacation. Like it becomes a pressure point.
So how did the characters grow out of this little seed?
I wanted the friends to be really different because I know my friends and I are not monolithic. And even your friends who are really close, you might kind of be living the same kind of lives now. But if you grew up differently, people who grow up with a lot of privilege kind of see the world differently from people who really had to struggle. And if people have different racial backgrounds, they can understand each other and love each other, but they interact with the outside world differently, and are perceived differently. So I liked the idea of these three friends being from very different geographies, different racial backgrounds, different family backgrounds, and they kind of teach each other about the world like through their own lenses.
Yeah, they were all really good characters, and I was not expecting things to go in the direction that they went. I thought it was really interesting how you unfolded where each of their difficulties with being publicly basically outed for either doing something that was either misunderstood or maybe just like looked at differently because of who they were, or not necessarily what it seemed, or maybe,
Yeah.
maybe it was. I don't want to say
Right. Yeah,
anything.
you can't say anything.
I really don't, because it like everything just kind of comes out little by little. Like, you learn a little bit about what Kelsey's situation is. Okay. Then you learn, what May's situation. And then I think Lauren's, if I'm correct, kind of comes out later than the
Yeah.
other two. But I did find that sort of unfolding, very well done. You also write series books, if I'm correct.
I have. So this is a standalone, but I've written a few series. My first three books were set in Portland, Oregon, and the main character was a prosecutor named Samantha Kincaid. That was the office I used to work in. And then when I moved to New York, I started a series set in New York featuring a detective named Ellie Hatcher. And then I co-authored a series with Mary Higgins Clark, Queen of Suspense, called the Under Suspicion series. So, and I've written I think I've written a total of 22 books if I count the co-authored series. So, and then about maybe half of them are series books and half are standalones. So,
How is it when you write a standalone versus a series? Like, and did you always sort of know that your series were going to be series? Like, did you have a point where you're just like, I can't leave this character behind. She has more stories to tell versus, May and Lauren and Kelsey, where it's just like, this is going to be self-contained. Their whole arcs
Yeah.
take place in this bubble.
I wish I could say I'm so like have a vision board and a stick to it, but I don't. My first book I just thought would be a book. Like I was, like a lot of people, just like I just dreamed of having a book. And then when my agent told me, good news, multiple people want it and they want to know if it's a series, I was kind of like, well, do they want it to be a series? He goes, yeah, I think they're assuming it's a series. And I'm like, then yes, it's a series the way I planned it, the way I always wanted it to be. And then Dead Connection was supposed to be a standalone set in the world of internet dating back when that was new. It's a long time ago. And I realized that the detective at the head of that book, Ellie Hatcher, I knew by the end of the book that I wasn't done with her yet. And then I wrote a book called The Ex with a lawyer character in it who goes and defends her ex on murder charges. And that was supposed to be a standalone. And then she has reappeared in two of my other books. So there's a lot of crossover. The police officer in the note, who's the one knocking on the girls' doors. He's been in another book too. So the world kind of overlaps in my books.
And that's kind of fun that you can do that, that you have these characters in your back pocket and you already know how they tick. And
Yeah.
if you're reading this as a standalone, you can just enjoy it like that. And then, if people are fans of or familiar with your other books, it's almost like a little treat, a little Easter egg to them, which is super, super
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I mean, and it is as a writer, it kind of draws on different, I wouldn't say different skills, but it's kind of different subsets of the skills because in a series book, kind of the challenge is to stay true to the character, but to have, you can't assume that the readers read the whole series, right? So you've got to make it so that it reads like a standalone, but you've got to have enough of the character there for the loyal series followers to feel like they're getting something new, right? But it's kind of like comfort. Like I know this whole ensemble. It's like having the friends back, on the page, and you just give them a new adventure to go through together. And then a standalone is like you're really just starting from scratch, like with a big old canvas and having to build out all of the characters from the get go, and to have the readers feel like they know them pretty quickly. So.
Your stories, the way that you write, are you more of like a discovery writer? Do you trip on the twists and turns as they come, or do you kind of know basically what's going to happen and feel around that?
Yeah, I think for me, I need to know the characters, and what makes them tick, and like why this is the right story for them to be in, and that gets me writing, and then I kind of get to know the characters better as I write, and then I go back and rewrite. But in terms of the plot, I kind of know who did it and why, and I'll know kind of the two or three really big aha moments, but I might not know exactly how they're going to be revealed or whose point of view will come or what order. But I kind of that kind of stuff, it's sort of I just do it organically as I go, and I'm like, oh, okay, that just happened. So,
The locations, obviously, this is an area that you are very familiar with,
yeah,
but you also, there is a theme in your books that law and lawyers and attorneys, and you mentioned before that that's something you'd done in the past. Uh, does knowing so much about that sort of make it harder or easier to write legal matters?
I think it makes it easier. I know the rhythm of a criminal case kind of pretty organically, and that kind of provides a natural arc and a natural kind of pace. It's almost like a time meter, it's like overarching the story, like kind of just keeping you on a clock. So it kind of gives a rhythm to the storytelling. The challenge is sometimes like I got to turn off the lawyer brain if I'm too tempted to kind of geek out and explain something really procedural. It's like I've written enough books now. I think in my first book, I probably like leaned into that a little too hard. If you do go back and read my debut. Nowadays, if I find myself talking about the law or talking about some procedural things specifically, I'll ask myself, like, does this add anything to the plot, to the characters, or to the setting? And if not, I'll be like, stop it, move along. And I don't let the law kind of get in the way of the storytelling. Like, what matters to me, like when I have people reach out to me doing their own research, like what would the police do? I tell them that you're asking the wrong question. You need to ask yourself as a storyteller, what do you need to have happen, right? And then a lawyer can help you figure out, okay, here's a feasible way where that thing can happen. Don't let the usual processes constrain your storytelling. You use them, right, to advance your story. So just make sure that it's plausible as opposed to what's most likely to happen. Right?
Was there one particular character that you enjoyed more than the others writing, or were they all sort of fun and interesting in their own way?
I really like all three of these women. I find them all, they're challenging women. Like they'd probably like, I would be friends with them, but they would be the kind of friends where every once in a while I'd have to shake them, and I think they're like that with each other. Like they do correct each other and will, give each other a read, as they say, when necessary. My favorite character is May's dog. She's got this dog named Gomez, who's a little pug, and he's like glued to her at all times, and is just like this little empath and knows all of her feelings, and is a little mama's boy. So like I found myself like falling in love with Gomez. I'm like, if I met Gomez on the street, I would have to steal
There
him.
was a lot of Gomez in this book. So actually,
He's
now
kind of the
that you say
comedic
that,
relief.
it makes perfect sense.
But he provides a little comedic relief, right? And he's also sort of like, maybe I shouldn't show my tricks, I suppose. Like sometimes you can't, May's not always honest even with herself about her own feelings. Like, she'll be angry but not admit she's angry, or she'll be sad and not admit she's sad, or she'll be like sneaking around and not admit she's being dishonest. And it's like Gomez is the May reader, like he's the May whisperer, and Gomez is like a little tell. Gomez will be like mommy's and pissy mood, and Gomez will go wandering off. So yeah, I was being a little facetious with the answer, but of the human characters, I liked a lot of them. I thought Lauren was for me a really fun character for me to write because like she knows exactly who she is. She's less self-doubting than like May is full of self-doubt and anxiety, and Lauren doesn't have any of that. Like Lauren's just like a boss, and I think she's very self-aware, and she knows who she is and is unapologetic about it, but is still like a very kind person. And she's fun. Like she's a fun person.
Yeah, I really liked her overall outlook. And that
Yeah.
is, again, something I'm not going to say too much about because
Yeah.
that'll read into her situation, which, the readers really need to figure out on their own. But I did find her perspective extremely refreshing.
Yeah, she's very, yeah, you can't ever say too much, but she's just not, she doesn't have traditional goals, and she's very unapologetically talented and ambitious. And, I think a lot of women sometimes feel bad about that. Like they don't want to admit that they are confident and ambitious and like don't have traditional goals. And she's not like that. So it was fun to be in her head.
100%. So, are you working on anything new at the moment, or are you taking a little bit of a break?
Always working on something, but I'm pretty early into my next book, so I will hopefully be deeper into it within a few months. But for right now, my priority is talking about
Which
the
it's
note.
good, and you should
Thank you so much.
absolutely read it. Well, thank you so much for chatting about it. There's more I want to say, but again, I don't want to say
It's
it
so
right
hard. I know.
now
It's
because it's
like
part of the journey of the book. So all I'll say is read the note. It is super, super fun. Oh, do you for those who are not familiar with the Hamptons, do you have any particular favorite places you would recommend if someone was to be traveling out there or find themselves out there?
I mean, the beaches out here are pretty spectacular, but most people go to the main beaches, the big ocean beaches, but get to know the bay beaches are beautiful, kind of go off the beaten path. Maidstone is such a lovely place. And then the restaurants, people like, there's a reason everybody knows about Nick and Tony's. Like, it's spectacular and you'll see and be seen. But like, if you go a little north into Springs, that's my neighborhood. There's like this great little place called Springs Tavern that's super neighborhoody. And so, yeah, leave the beaten path every once in a while.
100%. All right. This was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My guest was,
Alafair Burke, thank you.
and we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.